Hello, everyone, and welcome back to StoryNest Podcast. I'm really happy you're here today. Whether you're listening during your morning walk, on your way to work, while studying, or simply relaxing at home, thank you for making this podcast a part of your day. In our last episode, we talked about something that holds many English learners back. We discussed how translating every sentence in your head can slow down your speaking and make conversations feel stressful. Today, we're going to explore another challenge. In fact, it might be an even bigger challenge. It's not grammar. It's not vocabulary. It's not pronunciation. It's confidence. Have you ever known exactly what you wanted to say, but stayed silent anyway? Maybe you were afraid of making a mistake. Maybe you thought people would laugh. Maybe you worried that your pronunciation wasn't good enough. Or perhaps you believed your English simply wasn't ready yet. If any of those thoughts sound familiar, you're not alone. Almost every English learner has experienced them. The interesting part is that confidence and fluency are often misunderstood. Many people believe this: once I become fluent, I'll finally be confident. But what if the opposite is true? What if confidence comes first and fluency follows? Let's think about that for a moment. Imagine two learners. The first learner knows thousands of English words. They've studied grammar for years. They understand movies. They read books. But whenever someone speaks to them in English, they freeze. They overthink every sentence. They apologize before speaking. They worry about every tiny mistake. Now imagine another learner. This person knows fewer words. Their grammar isn't perfect. Their pronunciation still needs improvement. But they smile. They speak anyway. When they make a mistake, they laugh and continue. When they don't know a word, they describe it differently. They focus on communication instead of perfection. Who do you think improves faster? In most cases, it's the second learner. Not because they're smarter, not because they have more talent, but because they're willing to practice. Every conversation becomes another lesson. Every mistake becomes another teacher. Every attempt builds experience. Confidence isn't the reward at the end of the journey. It's the fuel that helps you continue the journey. Here's something many learners don't realize. Confidence doesn't mean believing you'll never make mistakes. Confidence means believing that mistakes won't stop you. Think about riding a bicycle. When you first learned, did you expect to ride perfectly? Of course not. You expected to wobble. You expected to lose your balance. Maybe you even expected to fall. But you also expected to get back up. Language learning works exactly the same way. Mistakes aren't signs that you're failing. They're signs that you're learning. In fact, if you're never making mistakes, you might not be challenging yourself enough. There's a famous saying among language teachers: if you're comfortable all the time, you're probably not growing. Growth begins where comfort ends. That doesn't mean you should feel overwhelmed. It simply means that a little discomfort is part of progress. Think about the first time you spoke English with another person. Your heart probably beat a little faster. You may have forgotten simple words. Maybe your hands felt nervous. That's completely normal. Your brain was doing something new, and every new experience feels a little uncomfortable at first. The important thing isn't avoiding those moments. It's learning to walk through them, because every time you do, the next conversation becomes just a little easier. Today, we'll talk about practical ways to build confidence before fluency. Not fake confidence, not pretending to know everything, but real confidence. The kind that grows from action, the kind that allows you to keep speaking, even when your English isn't perfect. Because here's the truth. Nobody becomes fluent by waiting until they feel ready. People become fluent because they keep speaking long before they feel ready. And that's exactly where our journey begins today.
Let's begin with an important question. Where does confidence actually come from? Many people think confidence is something you're born with. They look at someone speaking English naturally and think, they're just confident. But confidence rarely appears out of nowhere. It grows from experience. Think about the first time you used a smartphone. At first, everything felt unfamiliar. You searched for buttons, you tapped the wrong icons, you weren't sure how everything worked. But after using it every day, you stopped thinking about it. Now you unlock it, send messages, watch videos, and switch between apps without even noticing. Not because the phone became easier, but because you became more familiar with it. English works the same way. The more often you use it, the more natural it feels. Confidence is simply familiarity in action. That's why avoiding English doesn't protect your confidence, it slowly weakens it. Imagine someone who wants to learn to drive. Every time they have the chance to practice, they say, "Not today, I'll practice next week, I need to study more first." Months pass, even years. Do they become more confident? Of course not, because confidence doesn't grow while waiting, it grows while doing. Many English learners fall into the same trap. They say, "I'll speak when I know more vocabulary. I'll speak after I finish this grammar book. I'll speak when my pronunciation is perfect." But there will always be another grammar rule, another list of vocabulary, another pronunciation video. If you keep moving the finish line, you'll never feel ready. Here's something surprising. Most conversations don't require advanced English. Think about your daily life. You ask simple questions, you answer simple questions, you talk about work, school, food, family, movies, weather, plans for the weekend. These conversations are built with common words and simple sentences. You don't need to sound like a university professor to have a meaningful conversation. You simply need the courage to begin. Here's a small exercise you can try. Every morning, stand in front of a mirror for just 2 minutes. Look at yourself and speak in English. Talk about your plans for the day. Describe what you're wearing. Talk about yesterday. Or explain what you had for breakfast. Nobody is judging you. Nobody is correcting you. It's just you. At first, it might feel a little strange. That's okay. The goal isn't to impress anyone. The goal is to become comfortable hearing your own voice in English. Many learners spend years listening to English, reading English, watching English, but almost no time speaking it. Imagine trying to learn the piano by only listening to music. You might become an excellent listener, but your fingers would never learn where the keys are. Speaking is a skill, and every skill improves through practice. Another helpful habit is celebrating small victories. Sometimes learners ignore their progress because they're focused on everything they still can't do. Instead, notice the little improvements. Maybe today you understood an English video without subtitles. Maybe you remembered a word that you usually forget. Maybe you answered a question without translating first. Those moments matter. They're proof that you're improving. Progress isn't always dramatic. Most of the time, it's quiet, it's slow, it's almost invisible, until one day you suddenly realize, wait a minute, English feels easier than it used to. That moment doesn't happen by accident. It happens because of all the small efforts you made along the way. So don't underestimate today's practice. Even a 5-minute conversation with yourself, or a few sentences spoken out loud, can make a difference. Because confidence isn't built in giant leaps. It's built one sentence at a time, and every sentence you speak is another step toward becoming the English speaker you want to be.
Now, I'd like to tell you a story. Imagine 2 friends. Let's call them Alex and Daniel. Both of them decide to learn English on the same day. They buy the same books, they watch the same videos, they listen to the same podcasts. After 6 months, they both know about the same amount of vocabulary. They both understand basic grammar. From the outside, they seem to be making similar progress. But there's one important difference. Alex decides to use English every chance he gets. He joins online conversations, he leaves comments in English, he talks to himself while cooking dinner. Sometimes he makes mistakes, sometimes he forgets words, sometimes he feels embarrassed, but he keeps going. Daniel takes a different approach. He studies every day. He highlights grammar moles. He memorizes vocabulary lists. He tells himself, "I'll start speaking when I'm good enough." Weeks turn into months. Months turn into a year. Finally, both friends have an opportunity to speak with a native English speaker. Alex feels nervous. His heart is racing. But he smiles and starts talking. His grammar isn't perfect. His pronunciation isn't perfect. He pauses a few times. He even corrects himself once or twice. But the conversation continues. The native speaker understands him. They laugh together. They exchange ideas. By the end of the conversation, Alex feels proud. Not because he spoke perfectly, but because he communicated. Now it's Daniel's turn. He knows more grammar than Alex. He remembers more vocabulary. But the moment someone asks him a simple question, his mind goes blank. He begins searching for perfect sentences. He worries about every mistake before he even opens his mouth. Several seconds pass. Then he quietly says, "I'm sorry. My English isn't very good." The conversation ends almost before it begins.
Who do you think will improve faster after that day? Almost certainly Alex. Not because he need more, but because he had one thing Daniel didn't: experience. Every real conversation teaches lessons that no textbook can. You learn how people actually speak. You learn how to keep a conversation moving. You learn how to recover when you forget a word. Most importantly, you learn that making mistakes isn't the end of the world. That's one of the biggest secrets of confident speakers. They don't expect perfection. They expect progress. If you listen carefully to fluent English speakers, you'll notice something interesting. They don't always use complicated words. In fact, many conversations use surprisingly simple vocabulary. Instead of trying to sound impressive, they focus on being clear. That's a lesson every learner can use. Don't try to impress people. Try to connect with them. Connection is far more important than complexity. Here's another challenge you can try this week. Choose one situation where you would normally stay silent. Maybe it's leaving a comment on a YouTube video. Maybe it's introducing yourself in an online language community. Maybe it's asking a simple question in English. Maybe it's recording your own voice for 1 minute. Whatever it is, do it. Not because you'll do it perfectly, but because every action makes the next action easier. Remember this: confidence isn't something you find. It's something you build. One conversation, one mistake, one success, one brave moment at a time. Every confident English speaker you admire started exactly where you are now. They didn't wake up one morning speaking perfectly. They improved because they kept showing up. Again and again, even when it felt uncomfortable. And you can do exactly the same.
As we come to the end of today's episode, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Think back to the first time you tried something completely new. Maybe it was riding a bicycle, learning to swim, starting a new job, or walking into a classroom where you didn't know anyone. You were probably nervous. You probably questioned yourself. You may have even wondered if you were capable of doing it. But you kept going, and little by little, what once felt impossible became part of your everyday life. Learning English follows the same path. There isn't a magical day when confidence suddenly appears. Instead, confidence grows quietly. It grows every time you choose to speak instead of staying silent. It grows every time you ask a question, every time you answer one, every time you make a mistake and realize that the conversation didn't end because of it. In fact, something interesting often happens. The mistakes you worry about the most are usually the ones other people barely notice. Most people aren't listening to judge your grammar. They're listening to understand your message. If they understand what you're trying to say, then you've already succeeded. That's what communication is all about. Imagine meeting a traveler who is visiting your country. They don't speak your language perfectly. They pause, they search for words. Sometimes they use the wrong grammar. Would you laugh at them? Probably not. You'd likely appreciate the effort they're making. You'd try to help them. You'd focus on what they're saying, not on every tiny mistake. English speakers often feel the same way. They know learning another language is difficult. Most of them appreciate the effort much more than perfect grammar. So be kind to yourself. You're learning one of the most widely spoken languages in the world. That takes patience. It takes consistency. And yes, it takes courage. Every time you practice, you're becoming a little stronger. Not just as an English learner, but as someone who is willing to step outside their comfort zone. Before we finish, I'd like to give you a simple mission. For the next 7 days, say one thing in English every single day. It doesn't have to be a long conversation. It could be one sentence, one question, one voice recording, one comment online, or even 1 minute of speaking to yourself. The goal isn't to impress anyone. The goal is to prove something to yourself. I can use English today, not someday. If you keep making that small promise to yourself, you'll be surprised by how quickly those 1-minute moments become 5-minute conversations, and eventually real confidence. Always remember this. Fluency is not the starting line. It's the destination. Confidence is what helps you begin the journey. So don't wait until you feel completely ready. Start with the English you have today. Use the words you already know. Accept that mistakes are part of the process. And trust that every conversation, no matter how small, is moving you forward. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of StoryNest Podcast. I truly appreciate you spending your time here, and I hope today's episode encourages you to speak a little more bravely than you did yesterday. If you enjoyed this episode, keep following the road to fluency, because in our next episode, we'll explore another important step toward becoming a confident English speaker. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, keep believing in yourself. And remember, every fluent speaker was once a beginner who decided not to give up. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.